Welcome to The Explainer. You know, it's pretty amazing how we can track the ripples from today's biggest stories and see how a single flashpoint on one side of the planet can literally be felt right here at home.
So let's just kick things off with a quote that, wow, it really sets the tone for today's top story. Those were President Trump's words from yesterday, and they were aimed squarely at Iran as the standoff in the Middle East just keeps escalating.
All right, so let's get right into it. The whole situation, I mean, all of it, really hinges on this one tiny, incredibly strategic strip of water that's basically become ground zero for a global power struggle. So what exactly is the Strait of Hormuz? Well, think of it like the main artery that connects Middle East oil producers to, well, the rest of us. But seriously, why does this one little strait matter so much to everyone, everywhere? It all comes down to this one number, 20%. A full fifth of all the oil the entire world uses passes through that narrow channel every single day. So yeah, when that gets squeezed, you better believe the whole global economy feels it. And just look at this timeline. It shows you how incredibly fast this whole thing unraveled. I mean, it all started just a week ago with some failed peace talks. That led to a US naval blockade. Then, for a second, there was this tiny glimmer of hope when Iran briefly reopened the strait, only to just slam it shut again yesterday. Wild. And make no mistake, this is not just a war of words. The US blockade is very, very real. We're talking about American forces already intercepting and turning back 23 ships that were trying to get to Iranian ports. That's a big deal. Okay, so you might be thinking, why do I care about a blocked shipping lane thousands of miles away? Well, here's why it matters to you. The very first place you're going to feel this is at the pump. Yep, the national average for a gallon of regular has now shot right past that $4 mark. And this isn't a coincidence, right? It's a direct result of all that instability in the Gulf and the squeeze on the global supply. And if you think that's bad, it's even worse for diesel. We're talking over $5 a gallon now. And don't forget, diesel is what powers the trucks that deliver, basically everything we buy. So that extra cost, it gets passed right on down to us. All right, so while literally all eyes are on the Gulf, Washington, D.C. has, well, it has its own set of priorities. And when you look at what's actually getting attention, you start to see this really stark contrast in what's on the agenda. So for example, there's this really controversial project to build a massive $400 million ballroom at the White House. Well, it just got a green light from a federal appeals court to go ahead. That basically ends a legal fight that had put the brakes on construction for a little while. And this is where you really see the different priorities in Washington play out. You've got this $400 million private project on one hand, but on the very same day, the administration announced something completely different, a $50 million public investment into some pretty cutting-edge medical research for veterans. So yeah, that second thing, it happened just yesterday. President Trump, and this is interesting, he was joined by Joe Rogan in the Oval Office and signed an executive order. The whole point of it is to fast-track research into using certain substances for treating things like PTSD and other mental health issues that affect our veterans. Okay, so while Washington's attention was kind of split, a lot of people were probably looking for a distraction, and they got one. The first night of the NBA playoffs delivered a total, genuine shocker. But to really get why last night's game was just so stunning, you've got to remember the backstory here. Just last year, the Lakers made this absolutely massive trade. They got superstar Luka Dončić and basically rebuilt their entire franchise around him. And yet, here we are, their very first playoff game, and they're without Dončić and their other top scorer, Austin Reeves. And they somehow pull off this incredible upset, taking down a really powerful Houston Rockets team, on the road no less. So, the question is, how in the world did they do it? Well, this chart pretty much tells the story. It's all about efficiency. The Lakers just couldn't seem to miss, shooting over 60%. Meanwhile, the Rockets just went ice cold, hitting only about 37% of their shots. That'll do it. You know, all these big headlines, from global conflicts to huge playoff upsets, they can really overshadow some of the quieter, but just as serious crises. There's this persistent epidemic right here at home that just keeps taking a devastating toll, even when it's not making the front page. Just take a look at this data. The good news is that the rate of adolescent overdose deaths has come down from that horrible peak we saw in 2022. But, and this is a big but, the rate for 2024 is still more than 50% higher than it was before 2020. So this crisis is far, far from over. And in response to this, our schools have really had to step up and become a critical front line. It's pretty incredible, actually. This year, more than 3/4 of all public schools are now stocking naloxone. That's that life-saving drug that can actually reverse an opioid overdose.
But when you dig into the numbers, you find that access isn't equal at all. High schools, much more likely to have it than elementary schools. And even more concerning, you see that schools with more students of color are less likely to have naloxone on hand than schools with fewer students of color. And that reveals a really dangerous gap in our safety net.
And I think that brings us to the central challenge, right? In a world that's just full of these loud, urgent, competing headlines, from blocked shipping lanes to crazy playoff games, how do all of us maintain focus on the persistent, quieter crises that are unfolding right here in our own backyards? It's really something to think about.